Aderin wasn't supposed to open the file, but when she saw her name, her hospital number, her hands started shaking. The child everyone said was adopted wasn't adopted at all. He was born the same night she lost her baby, in the same hospital, and the family she worked for had known the truth the entire time. She stood in the driveway with her suitcase months later, her contract terminated, her mouth sealed by lawyers, watching the gate close between them. Everyone said she was lucky to have worked for such a powerful family. They never asked what it cost her to leave. The father didn't know the truth. And the moment Aderin realized that, she understood why they hired her as the nanny. The taxi had dropped her off at the gate 3 months earlier on a Tuesday morning that smelled like rain and freshly cut grass. Aderin stood with her single suitcase and a folder of documents, staring at the mansion that rose behind wrought iron gates like something from a different world. The agency had told her the family was wealthy, connected, influential. What they hadn't told her was that the house would feel like a museum, all cold marble and windows that reflected clouds instead of letting you see inside. A woman in a crisp uniform appeared at the gate without Aderin hearing her approach. She didn't smile, just scanned a badge, and the gate rolled open with a mechanical hum that made Aderin's stomach tighten. The walk to the front door felt longer than it should have. Every step on the stone pathway echoed. Aderin kept her breathing steady, reminding herself that this job paid triple what she'd made before, that it came with housing and meals, that it was supposed to be her fresh start after everything that happened 2 years ago. The door opened before she could knock. CO Warren stood in the entrance, impossibly elegant in a cream silk blouse and tailored trousers. Her hair was pulled back so severely it looked painful. Her smile was polite, but didn't reach her eyes. Miss Aderin Okoye. Welcome. I trust the journey wasn't too difficult. Her English was perfect, barely accented. Aderin nodded, suddenly aware of how wrinkled her shirt was from the flight and train ride. Thank you for having me, Mrs. CO. Please, come in. Leave your shoes here. The interior was exactly as cold as Aderin had imagined. White walls, minimalist furniture, art that probably cost more than Aderin would earn in 5 years. Everything was positioned perfectly, like a photograph of a home rather than a place where people actually lived. Warren led her through a series of hallways without small talk. Their footsteps clicked against marble floors. Aderin caught glimpses of rooms through open doors, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a sitting room with windows overlooking manicured gardens. Your quarters are separate from the main house, Warren said without looking back. You'll have privacy, but you'll be expected to be available when needed. The child wakes early. My husband works late. I have social obligations most evenings. They reached a door that led to what Aderin assumed was the staff wing. The temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees. The child's name is Jahan. He's 4 years old. Adopted, as I'm sure the agency mentioned. He can be difficult with strangers, but that will pass. Warren stopped at a door and turned to face Aderin directly for the first time. Her eyes were dark, unreadable. I need to be clear about something, Miss Okoye. Discretion is not optional in this household. What happens here, what you see, what you hear, stays here. The contract you signed includes confidentiality clauses. Breaking them would have legal consequences you cannot afford. Aderin felt the warning like a hand on her throat, but kept her expression neutral. I understand completely, Mrs. CO. Good. Then we'll get along perfectly. The room they'd given her was larger than her entire apartment back home had been. A bed with crisp white linens, a desk by the window, an attached bathroom with marble countertops. It was beautiful and sterile and lonely. Aderin set her suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed, letting herself feel the weight of exhaustion for just a moment. 2 years ago, she'd been in a different hospital, in a different country, being told her baby was gone. The doctors had been kind but clinical. Complications during delivery. Nothing anyone could have done. Her daughter had lived for maybe 20 minutes before her tiny heart simply stopped. Aderin had left that hospital empty in every possible way. The agency had found her 6 months later, offering positions abroad for qualified nannies. The pay was enough to rebuild. The distance was enough to forget. Except she hadn't forgotten. She'd just learned to function around the grief. A knock on the door pulled her back. A young woman stood in the hallway, maybe early 20s, with a friendly face that seemed out of place in this cold house. Hi, I'm Lami. I work in the kitchen mostly, but I help with Jahan sometimes too. Mrs. CO asked me to show you around before dinner. Her warmth was such a relief that Aderin almost hugged her. The tour was quick. The kitchen was industrial, staffed by 2 cooks who barely acknowledged them. The laundry room, the storage areas, the back gardens. Lami chattered the whole time, filling Aderin in on the household dynamics with the ease of someone who'd learned to read every mood shift. Mr. CEO is nice, really. He works in government, something important that I don't really understand. He's barely home, but when he is, he's kind. Jehun adores him. And Mrs. CEO? Lami's smile faltered just slightly. She's very particular. Everything has to be perfect. But if you follow the rules, it's fine. They were walking through the garden when Lami lowered her voice. Jehun's had 3 nannies in 2 years. The last one left pretty suddenly. Mrs. CEO didn't say why, but I heard her on the phone with the agency. Something about boundaries. Aderin's stomach twisted, but she kept her tone light. What kind of boundaries? Lami shrugged. I don't know. Just be careful, I guess. Don't get too attached. Don't ask too many questions. That evening, Aderin met Jehun. He was in the playroom, a space filled with toys that looked untouched, books arranged by size on white shelves. He sat on the floor with a set of building blocks, constructing something elaborate and focused. When Aderin entered, he looked up. His eyes were huge, dark, curious. He didn't smile, just watched her. Hi Jehun. My name is Aderin. I'm going to be spending time with you. He studied her for a long moment, then returned to his blocks without a word. Aderin sat down on the floor a few feet away, not pushing, just present. She watched him build in silence for several minutes. Then, quietly, she started humming. It was a lullaby her mother used to sing. Yoruba words she hadn't thought about in years, melody rising and falling soft and low. Jehun's hand stilled. He turned to look at her again, something flickering in his expression she couldn't name. Again, he whispered. So she sang it properly this time, the words coming back like muscle memory. Jehun abandoned his blocks completely and moved closer, sitting just within arm's reach, listening with an intensity that made Aderin's chest ache. When she finished, he whispered, My mama used to sing that. The room tilted. Aderin's voice came out steady by sheer force of will. Your mama had good taste. She's gone now. I know, sweetheart. He climbed into her lap without warning, curling against her chest like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Aderin wrapped her arms around him instinctively, and the smell of his hair, the weight of his small body, the way he fit perfectly against her, sent a shock of recognition through her system so violent, she almost gasped. Impossible. She was projecting. Grieving mothers saw their lost children everywhere. But when Jehun tilted his head back to look at her, Aderin saw the birthmark. Small, crescent-shaped, just behind his left ear. Exactly where her daughters had been. She didn't sleep that night. Aderin lay in her perfect guest room, staring at the ceiling, telling herself she was being irrational. Birthmarks were common. Lots of children had them. The lullaby thing was a coincidence. Korean families adopted internationally all the time. There was no reason to think anything was wrong. Except everything felt wrong. The next morning, she started paying attention. If you're finding this story compelling so far, please consider subscribing to stay updated with more content like this. Your support helps us bring these powerful narratives to light. Breakfast was served in the smaller dining room. Mr. CEO was already gone. Warren sat with her coffee and tablet, responding to emails with mechanical efficiency. Jehun pushed cereal around his bowl, quiet and watchful. Aderin noticed the staff moved around Jehun carefully, like he was fragile or maybe dangerous. They didn't engage with him directly, just placed things in front of him and disappeared. After breakfast, Aderin took Jehun to the garden. He held her hand without hesitation, which should have been sweet, but instead felt desperate. They were drawing with chalk on the stone pathway when one of the groundskeepers passed. He glanced at Jehun, then at Aderin, and something crossed his face. Surprise maybe. Or recognition. You look like someone, he said in halting English before catching himself and walking away quickly. Aderin's pulse hammered. That afternoon, while Jehun napped, she explored. Not snooping exactly, just noticing. The house had photographs everywhere, but none of them included Jehun as a baby. The family photos started when he looked about 2 years old. Before that, nothing. In the kitchen, she found a calendar on the wall. Someone had marked Jehun's birthday, April 15th. Aderin's daughter had been born April 14th. She died April 15th. Her hands started shaking again. Lami found her standing frozen in the hallway. Hey, you okay? Fine. Just turned around. Where's the medical cabinet? In case Jahoon needs anything. Lami pointed down the hall. Mrs. Seo keeps all that stuff locked in her office. You need something? No, just wondering. But Aderin filed that information away. That evening, Warren called her into the study. The room was all dark wood and leather, diplomas on the walls, awards from charitable organizations. Jahoon seems comfortable with you already, Warren said without preamble. That's unusual for him. He's a sweet child. He's a traumatized child. His birth mother abandoned him. The adoption process was complicated. He needs stability, not someone who will leave in 6 months. The words felt like a test. I'm not planning to leave, Mrs. Seo. Good. Because I need to be honest with you, Miss Okoye. We chose you specifically. Your background, your experience, your discretion. You understand loss. That makes you valuable. The room felt too small suddenly. I'm not sure I understand. Warren's smile was sharp. You will. Just remember that everything you have here, everything you've been given, depends on your ability to maintain boundaries. Jahoon is our son, not yours. Never yours. The emphasis on those last 2 words made Aderin's skin crawl. She left the study shaking, went to her room, and pulled out her phone. She searched for the hospital where she'd given birth. It had been in Seoul, a private facility that catered to international workers. She'd been there on a teaching contract, 7 months pregnant when complications started. The hospital's website was minimal. She found the contact information, hesitated, then put her phone away. She had no proof. No reason to think anything except that she was losing her mind. Except she wasn't. The next few days passed in a fog of routine and mounting dread. Jahoon clung to Aderin. He asked for her specifically in the mornings, refused to sleep unless she read to him at night. He called her by her name, but sometimes, when he was sleepy, he'd start to say something else and catch himself. Mr. Seo came home late one evening, earlier than usual. Aderin was in the living room with Jahoon, reading. The man was tall, tired-looking, with kind eyes. You must be Miss Okoye. I'm sorry we haven't properly met. He shook her hand warmly. Jahoon, how's my boy? Jahoon launched himself at his father with obvious joy. Mr. Seo caught him, laughing, and Aderin saw genuine love there. Whatever was happening, he didn't know. She was certain of it. He's been wonderful, Aderin said carefully. I'm glad. Warren said you were working out well. Jahoon doesn't usually take to people. He said it casually, but Aderin caught the concern underneath. This man loved his son. He just didn't know the truth. That night, Aderin made a decision. She waited until the house was quiet, until she was certain everyone was asleep. Then she slipped out of her room and down the hallway toward Warren's office. The door was locked, as expected, but Aderin had worked in enough wealthy households to know that people were careless about hiding keys. She checked the obvious places first. Nothing. Then she remembered the vase outside the office door, decorative and ugly. The key was taped to the inside. Her hands were steady now. She unlocked the door and slipped inside, closing it softly behind her. The office was organized to the point of obsession. File cabinets labeled and color-coded. Aderin went to the one marked medical and found it locked too. She searched the desk, found another small key in a drawer full of pens. The medical files were separated by year. She found Jahoon's folder, thick with documents. Birth certificate, adoption papers, medical records. She opened it under the desk lamp's dim light and started reading. The adoption papers listed a private agency. The birth mother's name was redacted. The date of birth, April 15th. The hospital, Seoul Premier Medical Center. The same hospital where Aderin had given birth. She kept reading, hands shaking now. There was a transfer record, a note about complications, a reference number that meant nothing to her. Then she found it. A medical bracelet, small, pink, stored in a plastic bag attached to one of the documents. The kind they put on newborns. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. The name printed on it read, Baby Girl Okoye. The room spun. Aderin sat down hard in the desk chair, staring at the bracelet, at the hospital number that matched her own records, at the date. They hadn't saved Jahoon. They'd taken her daughter. And they'd been calling her a boy for 4 years. Aderin sat in that chair for what might have been 5 minutes or 50, her mind fragmenting into 1,000 pieces and reassembling wrong. The bracelet sat in her palm, impossibly light for something that weighed enough to collapse the world. Her daughter. Alive. Not Jahoon. Jihi maybe. Or whatever name Warren had erased along with the truth. Aderin forced herself to keep looking through the file. There were more documents, each one a fresh wound. A DNA test from when the child was 3 days old, results showing no genetic match to Warren or her husband. A payment record to the hospital, a sum large enough to make Aderin's vision blur. Notarized statements from hospital staff confirming the adoption was legitimate, except none of it was legitimate. It was a purchase dressed up in paperwork. At the bottom of the file, she found her own medical records. Pages detailing the emergency C-section, the complications, the baby who'd supposedly died. There was a death certificate, official and stamped. But someone had written in the margins in Korean. Aderin pulled out her phone and used the translation app. Infant transferred to private care per family request. Death certificate processed as standard procedure for international documentation. They'd declared her daughter dead while she was still breathing. Aderin's stomach heaved. She barely made it to the trash can before she vomited, silent and shaking. When she could breathe again, she pulled out her phone and took pictures. Every document, every page, every scrap of evidence. Then she put everything back exactly as she'd found it, locked the cabinet, replaced the key, and slipped out of the office with the bracelet in her pocket. She didn't go back to her room. Instead, she went to Jehun's room and stood in the doorway, watching the child sleep. Her child, the face that had haunted her for 2 years, the phantom weight she'd carried, the grief that never fully healed because how could it when your baby had been stolen instead of lost? Aderin walked to the bed and knelt beside it. Up close, she could see more. The shape of the nose that matched her own. The curl pattern in the hair that had nothing to do with Korean genetics. The way the child's hand curled in sleep, exactly like Aderin's mother's hands used to curl. She'd known. Some part of her had known from the moment that lullaby made the child's eyes light up with recognition. "I'm here," Aderin whispered. "I found you. I'm here." Jehun stirred but didn't wake. Aderin stood, kissed her fingers, pressed them to the child's forehead, and left before she broke completely. Back in her room, Aderin sat on the floor with her back against the door and let herself shatter. She cried without sound, body heaving, until there was nothing left. Then she opened her laptop and started planning. The next morning, Aderin moved through breakfast like a ghost operating a body. Warren was on the phone, speaking rapid Korean. Mr. Seo had already left. Jehun ate quietly, watching Aderin with those huge eyes. "Are you sad?" the child asked. "A little." "Why?" "Sometimes grown-ups just are." Jehun climbed out of the chair and hugged Aderin's legs. The gesture was so pure, so instinctive, that Aderin had to close her eyes against fresh tears. "Don't be sad. I'm here." The words punched through her chest. "Thank you, sweet boy." Lami appeared in the doorway, looking nervous. "Mrs. Seo wants to see you in her office." Aderin's heart stopped. She'd been careful. She'd put everything back. But maybe there were cameras. Maybe Warren knew. She followed Lami down the hall, preparing herself for confrontation, for accusations, for the security guards she was certain would be waiting. But Warren was alone, sitting behind her desk with that same cold smile. "Close the door, please." Aderin did. "Sit." Aderin sat. Warren studied her for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was almost pleasant. "You're doing well with Jehun. Better than I expected, honestly. He's very attached to you. He's a wonderful child." "He is. Which is why we went through considerable effort to give him a good life." The word effort hung in the air like a blade. "I want to be transparent with you, Miss Okoye, because I think you're smart enough to appreciate the full picture." Warren leaned forward, hands folded on the desk. 4 years ago, my husband and I wanted a child. I couldn't carry one. Adoption in Korea is complicated, especially for families in the public eye. We needed discretion. We needed certainty. We needed a child who would be ours without question. Aderin's fingernails bit into her palms. "We found a facilitator at Seoul Premier Medical Center. Someone who understood that certain situations presented opportunities. Young mothers, foreign workers, complicated births. Sometimes these situations resulted in outcomes that benefited everyone." "You took babies from dying mothers," Aderin said flatly. "I gave a child to a mother who could provide everything," Warren corrected. "Your daughter would have been raised by a single woman in poverty. Now she's the child of one of the most influential families in Seoul. She has education, opportunity, security. She has a lie. She has a life." Warren pulled out her phone and turned it toward Aderin. On the screen was a photograph of Jehun at what looked like a birthday party, surrounded by other children, laughing, covered in cake. Look at her. Happy, healthy, loved. Could you have given her this? Aderin stared at the photo, at the joy on her daughter's face, and felt the knife twist. You told me she was dead. No. A doctor told you she died. I simply didn't correct the record. That's the same thing. Not legally. The death certificate is valid. The adoption is valid. Everything we did was technically within the boundaries of the law, if you know how to read it. Warren closed the phone and leaned back. I'm telling you this now because you've already figured it out, haven't you? You found something. Or you felt something. Either way, you know. Aderin said nothing. So now we arrive at the interesting part. What are you going to do about it? The question sat between them like a loaded gun. You could go to the police, Warren continued. You could try to prove what happened. You could demand custody, challenge the adoption, make a scene. She paused, letting Aderin imagine it. And you would lose. Because on paper, you have nothing. No evidence that would hold up in court. No legal standing. No resources to fight a family like ours. You'd be deported within a week, banned from the country, and you'd never see Jehun again. Her name isn't Jehun. It is now, and it will continue to be. Because that child knows one mother. Me. She knows one father. My husband. She knows one life. This one. Aderin's voice came out like gravel. He doesn't even know, does he? Your husband. He thinks this is a legitimate adoption. For the first time, something flickered in Warren's expression. Not quite guilt, but close. My husband is a good man who wanted a family. I gave him one. What he knows or doesn't know is irrelevant. It's not irrelevant to him. Then don't tell him, Warren said sharply. Because if you do, you won't just lose access to Jehun. You'll destroy her father, fracture her family, and traumatize her in ways she'll never recover from. The truth of it hit Aderin like a physical blow. So you're just going to keep me here, watching my own daughter and pretending she isn't mine? No, I'm going to give you a choice. Warren pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Option 1. You stay. You sign an expanded NDA. You continue as Jehun's nanny under the understanding that you are staff, nothing more. You get to watch her grow up. You get to be part of her life, even if she never knows who you really are. Aderin opened the folder. The contract inside was dense with legal language, but the core message was clear: permanent silence in exchange for proximity. Option 2. You leave. We pay out your contract, give you a generous severance, and you go back to your life. Jehun will be told you had a family emergency. In 6 months, she'll barely remember you. And if I don't choose either? If I go public? Warren's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Then I destroy you. I have lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. I have connections in immigration, law enforcement, media. I will bury you so completely that no one will even believe you existed, let alone that you have any claim to this child. She stood, smoothing her skirt. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Think carefully, Miss Okoye. Some truths are less important than the lives they would ruin. Aderin sat in the office long after Warren left, staring at the contract, at the impossible choice between heartbreak and heartbreak. That evening, Aderin went through the motions like she was underwater. She fed Jehun dinner, gave her a bath, read 3 stories even though the words barely registered. When Jehun finally fell asleep, Aderin sat in the rocking chair by the window and tried to think. If you've been moved by this story, please take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. These conversations matter. Stay and live a lie. Leave and lose everything. There had to be a third option. There had to be. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Aderin opened the door to find Lami standing there, looking nervous. Can we talk? Somewhere private. They went to the garden, where the security cameras had blind spots Lami seemed to know instinctively. Once they were hidden behind the hedge maze, Lami turned to face her. I know what you found. Aderin's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Please don't lie. I saw you coming out of Mrs. Seo's office 2 nights ago. I didn't say anything because I think you deserve to know the truth. Aderin studied the younger woman's face, looking for the trap. Why would you help me? Because I've been helping Mrs. Seo cover things up for 3 years, and I'm tired of it. Lami pulled out her phone and showed Aderin a photo. It was another medical document, this one showing a payment record to a hospital administrator. I'm not just kitchen staff. I'm Mrs. Seo's assistant for things that need to stay quiet. I process payments, handle documents, Manage the people she needs to keep silent. Then why tell me? Because this one went too far. I didn't know about Jehun at first. I thought it was a legitimate adoption. By the time I realized what actually happened, I was already complicit. If I spoke up, I'd go to prison too. Lami's hands were shaking. But I kept records. Backups of everything. I told myself it was insurance in case Mrs. Seo ever turned on me. But really, I think I knew someday someone would need them. She pulled out a USB drive. This is everything. The real adoption papers. The hospital payments. Emails between Mrs. Seo and the facilitator. Enough to prove what happened. Aderin took the drive with trembling fingers. Why now? Because Jehun deserves the truth. And because you're her mother. I watched you with her. I saw the way she responds to you. That's not just good childcare. That's biology. If I use this, you'll be implicated too. I know, but I can't keep living like this. And honestly, neither can you. Lami started to walk away, then turned back. There's something else you should know. Mr. Seo's been suspicious for months. He's noticed things don't add up. The timeline of the adoption, Jehun's appearance, the way Mrs. Seo gets defensive when he asks questions. He's been quietly looking into it. Hope flared in Aderin's chest. Has he found anything? Not yet. But if someone gave him the right push in the right direction, he might start demanding real answers. You mean I should tell him? I mean you should give him the chance to discover it himself. Men like Mr. Seo don't respond well to accusations from the help, but they do respond to evidence they find through their own channels. Lami squeezed Aderin's arm. There's a private investigator he's worked with before. I can get you his contact information. If someone anonymously sent him enough to start asking questions, Mr. Seo would listen to him. And Mrs. Seo would know it came from me. Not if you're very careful. Not if you let other people be the ones asking questions. They stood in the garden, two women carrying secrets heavy enough to crush them, and made a plan. The next morning, Aderin told Warren she needed more time to decide. 24 hours, Warren said. Not a minute more. But Aderin was already moving. She met with Lami that afternoon during Jehun's nap time. They went through the files on the USB drive, identifying the most damning evidence. Then Lami made a call to Mr. Seo's investigator, explaining that an anonymous source had information about an adoption fraud case that might interest him. The investigator agreed to meet that evening. Aderin spent the afternoon with Jehun, hyper-aware that every moment might be one of her last. They played in the garden. They drew pictures. Jehun made Aderin a flower crown from daisies and declared her a princess. The prettiest princess, Jehun said seriously. You're pretty sweet yourself. When I grow up, can I be like you? The question shattered something in Aderin's chest. You can be anything you want, baby. I want to be like you, Jehun insisted. You're the best. That evening, Lami went to meet the investigator while Aderin stayed with Jehun. She tried not to watch the clock, tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Lami returned 2 hours later and found Aderin in the kitchen. He's taking the case. He's going to start digging, and he's going to bring what he finds directly to Mr. Seo. How long? A week. Maybe less if he's good. A week. Aderin had to survive a week without breaking, without giving anything away, without making Warren suspicious. She went to Warren's office the next morning and signed the contract. Warren smiled like she'd won. I knew you'd make the right choice. I need to ask you something, Aderin said carefully. Does she ever ask about her birth mother? No. She knows she's adopted, but she's never asked for details. And when she does, we'll handle it when the time comes. If the time comes. Aderin nodded, tucked the signed contract into the folder, and left. She had just agreed to stay silent forever, while simultaneously setting in motion the explosion that would destroy that silence. All she could do now was wait. The week passed like moving through honey. Every moment stretched and distorted. Aderin went through her routines with Jehun, hyper-aware of Warren's eyes on her, of the security cameras, of the staff who might report any unusual behavior. At night, she lay awake imagining worst-case scenarios. The investigator finding nothing. Warren discovering the leak. Being deported before the truth came out. But on the 6th day, Mr. Seo came home early. Aderin was in the playroom with Jehun when she heard raised voices from the study. Korean, rapid and sharp. Warren's voice rising. Mr. Seo's voice cold in a way Aderin had never heard before. Lami appeared in the doorway, pale. You need to take Jehun outside. Now. Aderin didn't ask questions. She scooped Jehun up and headed for the garden. But not before she heard Mr. Seo shout a word she recognized even in Korean. Liar. They stayed in the garden for an hour. Jahun played on the swings while Aderin sat on a bench, heart hammering, waiting for security to come drag her away. Instead, Mr. Seo found her. He looked devastated. His eyes were red, his tie was loose, his hands were shaking. Miss Okoye, I need to speak with you. Aderin's mouth went dry. Of course. He glanced at Jahun, then back at Aderin, and something in his expression broke. Is it true? Aderin met his eyes and made a choice. Yes. He sat down heavily on the bench beside her, suddenly looking decades older. The investigator showed me everything. The real documents. The payments. The medical records. His voice cracked. Jahun is your daughter. Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Yes. And Warren knew. From the beginning. She planned it. Yes. Mr. Seo put his head in his hands. I have spent 4 years loving a child I thought we saved. Building a family I thought was blessed. And it was all built on theft. She's still your daughter, Aderin said quietly. You're still her father. That part is real. Is it? If it's all based on a lie? The love isn't a lie. You didn't know? You're a victim in this too. He looked at her then, really looked at her. What do you want? Custody? To take her back? Aderin glanced at Jahun, laughing as she pumped her legs on the swing, completely unaware that her entire world was shattering. I want her to be okay. That's all I've ever wanted. I could fight you. I have resources, lawyers. I could make this disappear. I know. But I won't. Because that's what Warren would do. And I'm realizing I don't know who my wife is anymore. He stood up, straightened his tie with shaking hands. There's going to be a DNA test. Official, court-ordered. The investigator is filing a report with Family Services. This is going to become very public, very quickly. Aderin's stomach dropped. What happens to Jahun? I don't know. That's up to the courts now. And you. And what's best for her? He walked away without another word, leaving Aderin alone with the daughter who still didn't know the truth. The next 72 hours were chaos. Family Services arrived with police escorts. They interviewed everyone. Aderin, Warren, Mr. Seo, the staff. They examined documents, took statements, photographed everything. Jahun was confused and frightened by the strangers in uniforms. She clung to Aderin during the interviews, refusing to let go. A social worker pulled Aderin aside. We're going to need a DNA test from you and the child. Standard procedure. Of course. And I need to inform you that depending on the results, there may be custody implications. Are you prepared for that? Aderin looked at Jahun through the window, being gently questioned by another social worker. I don't know what prepared means anymore. The DNA test was done that afternoon. A simple cheek swab that would prove what Aderin already knew in her bones. The results came back in 48 hours. 99.9% probability of maternity. Official. Undeniable. Legal. The news broke that same day. Someone leaked it to the press. Within hours, it was everywhere. Major news outlets, social media, international coverage. Government official's wife involved in adoption fraud scandal. Child stolen from foreign mother, raised as Korean elite's daughter. Nanny discovers employers stole her baby. The house was under siege. Reporters camped outside the gates. Camera crews filmed from telephoto lenses. Helicopters circled overhead. Mr. Seo moved out that night, taking Jahun with him to an undisclosed location to protect her from the media circus. Aderin was allowed supervised visits. 2 hours, twice a week, always with a social worker present. The first visit was brutal. Jahun ran to her crying. Why did Daddy take me away? Why can't I come home? Where's Mama? She meant Warren, the only mother she'd ever known. Mama's dealing with some grown-up things right now, sweet girl. When can I see her? Aderin glanced at the social worker, who shook her head slightly. I don't know, baby. Is it because of me? Did I do something wrong? No. No, you didn't do anything wrong. This is not your fault. But Jahun was 4 years old, and the world had turned upside down. She didn't understand. How could she? They played with blocks. Jahun was quieter than usual, watching Aderin like she was afraid she'd disappear too. At the end of the 2 hours, Jahun refused to leave. I want to stay with you. Please. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Aderin held her while she sobbed, feeling her heart crack into smaller and smaller pieces. You are good. You're the best. I'll see you again soon, okay? Promise. I promise. Mr. Seo's assistant came to collect Jahun. The child screamed as they pulled her away, reaching for Aderin with desperate hands. The social worker waited until Jahun was gone before speaking. This is going to get worse before it gets better. The court case will take months, maybe longer. You need to prepare yourself for all possible outcomes. What outcomes? Full custody to you. Shared custody. Custody remaining with Mr. Seo. The child being placed in foster care while it's sorted out. Foster care. It's rare, but if the court determines the current situation is too unstable, they may temporarily remove her from both parties. Aderin felt sick. She's already been traumatized enough. I agree, which is why I'm going to recommend in my report that she remain with Mr. Seo during the proceedings. He's the only stable parent figure she's known. Removing her from him would cause additional harm. Even though he's not her biological father, he's been her father for 4 years. That matters. Biology isn't the only thing the court considers. The social worker softened slightly. I know this isn't fair. I know you're the victim here. But my job is to prioritize the child's well-being above all else. And right now, that child needs consistency. Aderin nodded numbly. She went back to the house that evening to find it mostly empty. Mr. Seo had taken Jahun and most of the staff. Warren was gone. Her lawyer had issued a statement claiming she was receiving medical treatment for stress. Lami was still there, packing up the kitchen. They're closing the house, she said. Selling it, probably. Too many reporters. Where will you go? I have family. I'll be okay. Lami paused. Are you okay? No. I'm sorry. I thought exposing the truth would fix things. The truth doesn't fix anything. It just makes the damage visible. They sat in the empty kitchen, two women who'd tried to do the right thing and discovered there was no right thing to do. For what it's worth, Lami said, Jahun knows you love her. Even if she doesn't understand everything else, she knows that. It was worth something. Not enough, but something. The court case began 3 weeks later. Aderin sat in a sterile conference room across from lawyers she couldn't afford. The Korean government had provided her with legal representation after the international outcry, but the lawyer was overworked and underpaid and clearly didn't believe they could win. The best we can hope for is shared custody, he told her. Maybe visitation rights and financial support from the Seo family. I want my daughter back. I understand. But the reality is that you're a foreign national with limited financial resources trying to get custody of a child who's been raised by a prominent Korean family. The courts here prioritize stability. They're going to see Mr. Seo as the more stable option. Even though his wife is a criminal, Mrs. Seo is being prosecuted separately. Mr. Seo has been cleared of any wrongdoing. The court sees him as a victim too. So what am I supposed to do? Be patient. Build your case. Show the court you can provide a stable home. But how was she supposed to do that when she was still living in the mansion they'd provided, still dependent on their money for everything, still trapped in the life they'd built around the lie? The preliminary hearing was worse than Aderin imagined. Warren's lawyers argued that the adoption was legitimate, that any irregularities were the fault of the hospital, that their client had acted in good faith. Mr. Seo's lawyers argued that he was an innocent party who'd been deceived, that removing the child from his custody would cause irreparable psychological harm. Aderin's lawyer argued that she was the biological mother and deserved custody. The judge listened to all of it with an expression of deep weariness. This court recognizes that all parties involved have legitimate claims and legitimate grievances. However, the primary concern must be the welfare of the child. He looked at Aderin. Miss Okoye, I don't doubt your love for your daughter. But this child has lived with Mr. Seo as her father for her entire conscious memory. Removing her from his custody at this time would constitute further trauma. Aderin's lawyer stood. Your Honor, with respect, Miss Okoye has been denied the opportunity to be a mother to her child for 4 years due to criminal fraud. I understand, which is why I'm ordering a gradual transition period. Miss Okoye will have supervised visitation 3 times per week, increasing to unsupervised visitation after 3 months, pending psychological evaluations. After 6 months, we will reconvene to discuss custody arrangements. 6 months. Aderin's voice broke. The judge's expression was sympathetic but firm. I know it seems like a long time, but this child needs stability. We cannot uproot her entire life overnight. The gavel came down. Aderin walked out of the courthouse into a wall of camera flashes and shouted questions. Her lawyer guided her to a car, but not before she heard the reporters. Miss Okoye, how does it feel to get your daughter back? She wanted to scream that she hadn't gotten her daughter back. She'd gotten supervised visits and a maybe in 6 months. That night, alone in a hotel room the government had moved her to for safety, Aderin finally let herself break completely. She cried until she couldn't breathe, screamed into pillows, threw things at walls. Then she pulled herself together and made a decision. If the court wanted to see stability, she'd show them stability. The next morning, Aderin met with a different lawyer, one who specialized in international custody cases. I need to know my options, she said. All of them. The lawyer was blunt. You have 3 realistic paths. 1. You fight for full custody here in Korea. It's a long shot, expensive, and traumatic for everyone involved. 2. You accept shared custody and build a relationship with your daughter while she's primarily raised by Mr. Seo. 3. You take your daughter and leave the country. Isn't that kidnapping? Only if you don't have legal grounds. If you can prove the adoption was fraudulent, which you can, and if you're the biological mother, which you are, you might be able to argue for repatriation. They'd never let me take her out of the country. Not officially. But people leave countries every day. And once you're in a country with different extradition laws, particularly your home country, it becomes much more complicated to force you back. Aderin stared at her. You're suggesting I run. I'm suggesting you consider all options. You could build a life somewhere else. Somewhere your daughter wouldn't be the center of a media scandal. Somewhere you could actually be her mother. The idea took root despite Aderin trying to reject it. She could take Jehun, get on a plane, disappear into a different life. But that would make her exactly what Warren was. A kidnapper. A liar. Someone who put her own wants above the child's needs. I can't do that to her, Aderin said finally. She loves her father. Taking her from him would hurt her as much as what Warren did hurt me. The lawyer nodded like she'd expected that answer. Then you fight the long fight. You show up for every visit. You build trust. You let the courts see that you're stable and committed. And maybe, eventually, you get shared custody. Maybe even primary custody if Mr. Seo agrees. And if he doesn't, then you lose. But at least you'll be in your daughter's life. It wasn't fair. It wasn't justice. But it was real. Aderin spent the next 3 months becoming the most stable person the court had ever seen. She got a job teaching English. She rented a small apartment. She attended every supervised visit and documented everything. Jehun slowly started to relax with her again. They developed routines. Drawing on Wednesdays. Reading on Fridays. Park visits on Sundays. Jehun still called her Aderin, not Mama. Still asked when she could go home to Daddy. Still sometimes cried for Warren even though Warren was facing criminal charges and wasn't allowed contact. But she also started saying things like, "Can we do this again?" and "I missed you," and once, heartbreakingly, "Why didn't you come back sooner?" Mr. Seo attended some of the visits. He and Aderin existed in awkward détente, 2 people who loved the same child for different reasons, trying to figure out how to share something that shouldn't have to be shared. At one visit, while Jehun played on the swings, Mr. Seo sat next to Aderin on the bench. "She's been asking questions," he said quietly. "About where she came from. About you. What have you told her?" "The truth. Age-appropriate version, but the truth. That she grew in your body. That you didn't give her up. That someone made a very bad choice." How did she react? She's confused. She wants to know why you didn't come find her sooner. The accusation in the child's innocent question cut deep. "What did you say?" "That you didn't know where to look. That when you found her, you came as fast as you could." Aderin's throat tightened. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mr. Seo spoke again. "I've been thinking about custody. About what's best for her." Aderin's heart started racing. "The lawyers think I should fight you. Keep primary custody. Give you minimal visitation. Protect my family name. Are you going to?" "No." He turned to look at her. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about what kind of man I want to be. What kind of father. And I realized that the kind of father I want to be is the kind who does what's right, even when it's hard." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not going to fight you for custody. I'm going to propose shared custody. Equal time. Joint decisions. We raise her together." Aderin couldn't speak. "She needs both of us," Mr. Seo continued. "She needs her biological mother. But she also needs the father she's known her whole life. I can't erase what Warren did. But I can try to build something better from the wreckage." "Why would you do that?" "Because I love her. And because you love her. And love isn't about possession. It's about what's best for her." He stood up. My lawyers will contact yours tomorrow. We'll work out the details. He walked toward Jehun, then paused and looked back. I'm sorry. For everything. For what my wife did. For the years you lost. I can't give those back. But I can give you a future. After he left, Aderin sat on the bench and cried. Not from grief this time, but from something that felt almost like hope. The arrangement wasn't perfect. Jehun spent weekdays with Mr. Seo and weekends with Aderin. Holidays were split. Major decisions were made jointly. It was complicated and messy and sometimes painful. Jehun struggled with the transitions. She'd cry when it was time to leave either parent. She'd mix up houses, forget which toys were where, ask why she couldn't just have one home like other kids. But slowly, over months that turned into a year, they found a rhythm. Aderin learned to be patient, to answer questions honestly, to respect that Jehun loved her father even though his wife had committed an unspeakable crime. Mr. Seo learned to step back, to let Aderin have her moments without hovering, to accept that Jehun would eventually start calling Aderin Mama too without it diminishing his role. Jehun learned that family could be complicated and still be real, that she could love two homes, that having more people who loved her wasn't confusing, it was lucky. Warren was convicted of fraud and conspiracy. She served 18 months in prison and was released under house arrest. She sent letters to Jehun that Mr. Seo intercepted, keeping them sealed for when Jehun was old enough to decide if she wanted to read them. The media eventually moved on to other scandals. The house was sold. The staff scattered. Lami got a job at a nonprofit and sometimes sent Aderin updates. And life continued. Not the life Aderin had imagined when she'd held her newborn daughter for 17 minutes before the doctors took her away, claiming she'd stopped breathing. Not the life she'd dreamed of during the 2 years she'd grieved a child who wasn't actually dead. Not even the life she'd hoped for when she'd first discovered the truth. But a life. A real one, built on honesty instead of lies, on shared love instead of stolen possession. 2 years after the court case, Aderin sat in the park watching Jehun play. The child was 6 now, confident and bright, bilingual in Korean and English, comfortable moving between two worlds. Mr. Seo joined her on the bench. They did this sometimes, co-parented in the same space, showing Jehun that the adults in her life could be united even when they lived separately. She's doing well, he said. She is. She told me yesterday she wants to visit Nigeria someday. Meet your family. Aderin smiled. I'd like that. Me too. They watched Jehun climb the jungle gym, fearless and laughing. Do you ever regret it? Mr. Seo asked quietly. Not taking her and running when you had the chance. Aderin had thought about that question 1,000 times. Every day, she admitted. And never. If I'd run, she'd have lost her father. She'd have grown up looking over her shoulder, knowing she was stolen even if it was by the right person. This way, she gets both of us. It's not perfect, but it's honest. Honest, Mr. Seo repeated. That's more than most families can say. Jehun ran over, breathless. Daddy, Mama, watch this. She'd started calling Aderin Mama about 6 months ago. The first time she'd said it, Aderin had cried for an hour. Mr. Seo had cried too. They watched as Jehun performed an elaborate routine on the monkey bars, narrating her own actions like a sports commentator. And Jehun completes the impossible flip. The crowd goes wild. She jumped down and ran back to them. Did you see? Did you see? We saw, Aderin said, pulling her close. You were amazing. Can we get ice cream now? Mr. Seo checked his watch. I have a meeting in an hour, but we have time for a quick cone. Yes. Jehun grabbed both their hands, one on each side, swinging between them as they walked toward the ice cream cart. People stared sometimes. A Korean man, a Nigerian woman, and a mixed-race child who looked like both of them and neither of them. An unconventional family built from tragedy. Aderin didn't care about the stares anymore. That evening, back at her apartment, Aderin helped Jehun with homework. Korean language practice, then English reading. Mama, can I ask you something? Always. Why didn't the hospital tell you I was alive? They'd had versions of this conversation before, but Jehun's understanding deepened as she got older. The questions became more specific, harder to answer. Because someone paid them not to. Someone who wanted you very much, but wanted you in the wrong way. Mrs. Warren. Jehun never called her mother anymore. Just her name, formal and distant. Yes. Do you hate her? Aderin considered the question carefully. Honesty was important. but so was not poisoning Jehun with bitterness. I hate what she did. I'm angry about the years we lost. But hate is heavy, baby. I try not to carry it because it makes it harder to be happy now. Is Daddy mad at her? Yes, very mad. And very hurt. Because she lied to him too. That's right. Jehun was quiet for a moment, pencil poised over her worksheet. I'm glad you found me, she said softly. Even though it was hard. Even though everything got messy. Aderin's throat tightened. Me too, sweet girl. Me too. Later, after Jehun was asleep in the small bedroom Aderin had decorated with drawings and photos and favorite toys, Aderin sat on her balcony and let herself feel everything she usually kept locked away during the day. The grief for the lost years. The anger at Warren. The guilt for the pain Jehun had endured during the custody battle. The fear that she'd never be enough, that she'd always be making up for lost time. But also the gratitude. For Mr. Seo's decency. For Lami's courage. For the social worker who'd actually cared. For the second chance that shouldn't have been necessary but was precious anyway. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Seo. Jehun asked if she could have a birthday party this year with friends from both households. I think it's a good idea. What do you think? Aderin smiled through tears. I think it's perfect. 3 months later, the birthday party happened in a rented community center. Kids from Jehun's school, from her neighborhood with Mr. Seo, from the park near Aderin's apartment. 2 cakes because they couldn't decide on one flavor. Decorations in Jehun's favorite colors. Mr. Seo and Aderin worked together, awkward at first but finding a rhythm. Setting up tables, organizing games, managing chaos. At one point, standing side by side while kids ran screaming through obstacle courses, Mr. Seo said, "We're doing okay, aren't we?" "Yeah," Aderin said. "I think we are." Jehun blew out 7 candles surrounded by people who loved her. She made a wish she wouldn't tell anyone. She opened presents with genuine joy. She ran herself exhausted playing with friends. When the party wound down and families started leaving, Jehun sat between Aderin and Mr. Seo, leaning against both of them, happy and tired. "Best birthday ever," she declared. "I'm glad, sweetie," Mr. Seo said. "Next year can we do it again? With everyone together like this?" Aderin and Mr. Seo exchanged glances. "Absolutely," Aderin said. "If this story has resonated with you, please take a moment to share it. Stories like these need to be heard, and your engagement helps others find them." That night, after Mr. Seo took Jehun home, Aderin sat in her quiet apartment and pulled out the small box she kept in her closet. Inside was the pink hospital bracelet she'd found that first night. Baby girl Okoye. The evidence that had started everything. She hadn't looked at it in months. Looking at it used to hurt too much. But now, she could hold it without shattering. She could remember that night, the way they'd told her her baby was dead, the grief that had consumed her, and she could also remember finding the truth. Fighting for it. Surviving it. She put the bracelet back in the box, but this time she added something new. A photo from Jehun's birthday party. All 3 of them, smiling, together. Not a perfect family. Not a normal family. But a real one. The next few years unfolded with the messy beauty of real life. Jehun grew. She excelled in school. She made friends. She had her father's discipline and Aderin's creativity. She moved between 2 homes with increasing ease, adapting, thriving. She had hard days too. Days when the confusion of her origins overwhelmed her. Days when she was angry at Warren for the lie, at Aderin for not finding her sooner, at Mr. Seo for not knowing, at the whole impossible situation. On those days, both parents held space for her feelings. They didn't try to fix it or explain it away. They just let her feel what she felt and loved her through it. When Jehun was 9, she asked to meet Warren. The request came out of nowhere on a Tuesday evening. She was at Aderin's apartment, doing homework at the kitchen table. "I want to see her. Mrs. Warren. I want to ask her why." Aderin's stomach dropped, but she kept her voice steady. "That's a big decision. Have you talked to your dad about it?" "Not yet. I wanted to ask you first. Is it okay? Would it hurt you if I saw her?" The fact that Jehun was considerate enough to ask made Aderin's heart swell and break simultaneously. "It would be hard for me," Aderin admitted. "But this isn't about me. If you need to see her, if you need answers, then we'll figure it out together." Jehun nodded slowly. "I'm not going to call her mom or anything. I just need to understand." Mr. Seo was less enthusiastic when Jehun brought it up with him, but he didn't refuse. "If this is what you need, we'll make it happen. But I'm coming with you." And so is your mama. The meeting was arranged through lawyers. Neutral location. Time limits. Ground rules. Warren looked smaller than Aderin remembered. Prison had aged her. House arrest had hollowed her out. She sat across from Jahun in a conference room, hands folded, eyes wet. "You've grown so much," Warren said in Korean. Jahun answered in English, a choice that felt deliberate. "I came to ask you why. Why did you take me?" Warren's composure cracked. "Because I wanted a child more than anything in the world. Because I thought I could give you everything. Because I convinced myself that wanting you badly enough made it okay. But it wasn't okay. No, it wasn't. Did you know my real mama was looking for me? No. I thought she believed you were dead. I thought it was a clean break. There's no such thing as a clean break when you steal someone's baby." The words came out cold and clear. Jahun was 9 years old and already understood the magnitude of what had been done to her. Warren wept openly now. I know I destroyed lives. I told myself I was saving you, giving you opportunities, but I was just selfish. I wanted to be a mother so badly that I didn't care how I made it happen. Do you wish you hadn't done it? Every day? But wishing doesn't fix anything." Jahun stared at her for a long moment. "I don't forgive you. I don't know if I ever will. But I needed to see you. I needed to know that you were real, that you knew what you did was wrong. I know. And I'm sorry. I will be sorry for the rest of my life." Jahun stood up. "Okay, I'm done now." They left Warren sitting in that conference room, still crying, still broken. In the car, Jahun was quiet. Mr. Seo drove. Aderin sat in the back with Jahun, holding her hand. "How do you feel?" Aderin asked. "I don't know. Sad, I guess. For everyone." "That's fair. She loved me, didn't she? In a messed up way, she really loved me." "I think so, yes. But love isn't enough if it hurts people." "No, baby. It's not." Jahun leaned her head against Aderin's shoulder. "I'm glad I have you. Both of you. Even though it's complicated. Complicated is better than lies," Mr. Seo said from the front seat. "Yeah," Jahun agreed. "It is." They never saw Warren again. She sent letters occasionally that Mr. Seo kept sealed. Maybe someday Jahun would want to read them. Maybe not. That was her choice to make when she was ready. Life moved forward. When Jahun was 12, she started asking about Nigeria, about Aderin's family, her culture, her home. "Can we go visit? I want to meet Grandma. I want to see where you grew up." They planned a trip for the summer. 2 weeks in Lagos. Mr. Seo paid for the tickets, insisting it was important for Jahun to know all parts of her heritage. Aderin's mother wept when she met Jahun. She'd known the baby existed, had grieved her, had prayed for years that somehow the story had been wrong. "My grandbaby," she kept saying, holding Jahun's face in her hands. "My grandbaby came back." Jahun embraced it all. The food, the language, the music, the chaos of a huge extended family. She practiced Yoruba phrases. She learned to dance. She laughed until her stomach hurt. On their last night, sitting on Aderin's mother's porch while the neighborhood hummed with life, Jahun said, "I feel like I fit here. But I also fit in Seoul. Is that weird?" "Not weird," Aderin said. "Lucky. You get to belong to multiple places. Multiple cultures. That's a gift, even if it came from something bad. Especially then. You're taking the broken pieces and making something beautiful out of them." Back in Seoul, life continued its complicated rhythm. Jahun split time between houses. She navigated 2 languages, 2 cultures, 2 families that loved her differently, but equally. When she was 15, she wrote an essay for school about identity and belonging. She wrote about being stolen and found, about having 2 mothers and 1 mother, and somehow both being true, about learning that family wasn't about blood or law, but about who showed up and loved you through the mess. She won an award for it. At the ceremony, both Mr. Seo and Aderin sat in the audience, proud and heartbroken and grateful all at once. Jahun read the essay aloud to a room full of people. Her voice was steady. "My story started with a lie. Someone took me from my mother and told her I was dead. For years, I lived as someone else's daughter, not knowing the truth. When the truth came out, it broke everything. My family shattered. The only mother I'd known went to prison. The stranger who was my real mother became my actual mother. The father I loved was proven to be a victim too." She paused, looking out at the audience. "I could have let that define me. I could have let the theft and the lies and the betrayal make me bitter. But I had people who loved me enough to do the hard work of healing. My dad, who chose honesty over reputation. My mama, who chose my well-being over revenge. Together, they built something new from the wreckage. Her eyes found Aderin and Mr. CO in the crowd. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. It wasn't. There were years of therapy, tears, difficult conversations, days when I hated everyone, including myself. But we kept showing up. We kept choosing each other. And now I have a family that's messy and unconventional and completely mine. She folded her paper. My story started with a lie, but it continues with the truth. And the truth is that love is more than biology, more than law. It's action. It's choice. It's showing up every day and doing the work to make something broken into something whole. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, in the parking lot, the three of them stood together in a moment of quiet before separating to their different homes. That was beautiful, sweetie, Mr. CO said. Really beautiful, Aderin agreed. Jehun smiled, looking between them. I meant every word. You gave me something most people don't get. You gave me the truth, even when it hurt. Even when lies would have been easier. She hugged them both. Thank you for that. Thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for loving me enough to do the hard thing. Driving home that night, alone in her car, Aderin let herself remember the woman she'd been 6 years ago. Standing in that driveway with a suitcase, watching the gate close, believing she'd lost everything. She'd been right about losing things. Her innocence about the world. Her trust that justice would happen naturally. The years she should have had with her baby. But she'd gained things too. A daughter who knew her. A co-parent who'd proven that decency still existed. A life built on truth instead of comfortable lies. It wasn't the life she would have chosen. If someone had offered her a different path, one where she'd never lost her daughter in the first place, she'd take it in a heartbeat. But of the possible lives available after the theft, after the lies, after everything had shattered, this was the best one they could have built. And that had to be enough. Years continued to pass. Jehun graduated high school with honors. She got into university, studying international law with a focus on adoption rights and child welfare. I'm going to make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to other families, she told Aderin. I'm going to close the loopholes that people like Mrs. Warren exploited. She was fierce and brilliant and determined. Everything Aderin could have hoped for. On Jehun's 18th birthday, they had dinner together. All three of them, plus Jehun's boyfriend and a few close friends. A celebration of becoming an adult, of surviving everything, of choosing joy despite the origins. Late in the evening, after most people had left, Jehun pulled out the pink hospital bracelet. Aderin had given it to her years ago, thinking she should have it, should own her own history. I want to do something with this, Jehun said. I was thinking about framing it with a photo from my first birthday party. The one where we all came together. A reminder of where I started and where we are now. I think that's perfect, Aderin said. Mr. CO nodded agreement. Jehun looked at both of them. I know this hasn't been easy. I know you both sacrificed things to make this work. I know there were probably days you wanted to give up, to fight instead of collaborate, to choose the easier path. Many days, Mr. CO admitted. So many days, Aderin agreed. But you didn't. You chose me. You chose what was best for me even when it hurt you. And I need you to know that I see that. I understand it. And I'm grateful. She pulled them both into a hug. I love you both. You're my family. Not despite the complicated beginning, but including it. All of it. That night, Aderin stood on her balcony for the last time. She was moving to a bigger place, something with room for Jehun to visit when she was home from university, space for the life she'd built. She thought about the woman who'd arrived at a mansion gate 6 years ago, broken and grieving, not knowing she was walking toward her daughter. She thought about the moment she'd found the bracelet, the world tilting, everything changing. She thought about Warren, rotting in her own guilt somewhere, about Lami who'd risked everything to help, about Mr. CO who'd chosen integrity over pride. She thought about Jehun, brilliant and whole despite everything designed to break her. And she thought about herself, about the mother she'd become in stolen moments and supervised visits and shared custody agreements. Not the mother she'd planned to be, but the mother she needed to be. The one who showed up, the one who fought, the one who loved fiercely enough to share her daughter with the man who'd been unwittingly complicit in stealing her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jehun. Thanks for dinner, Mama. I love you. 3 words that had taken years to earn. That Aderin would never take for granted. She typed back, I love you too, baby. Always have. Always will. Another message came through, this time from Mr. Seo. She's remarkable. We did good. We did, Aderin replied. She looked out over the city, at the lights spreading like stars to the horizon. Somewhere out there, other mothers were losing children. Other lives were being constructed. Other lives were being stolen. But here, in this one small corner of the world, the truth had won. Not perfectly, not without cost, but enough. Aderin went inside, closed the balcony door, and started packing for her new home. Her daughter was alive. Her daughter knew her. Her daughter loved her. After everything, after all the years and tears and impossible choices, that was more than enough. That was everything. If this story has moved you, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. Share your thoughts in the comments below. These stories matter, and your engagement helps us continue bringing them to light. Thank you for watching until the end. Some truths don't set you free. They teach you how to survive them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they teach you how to build something beautiful from the broken pieces. This was one of those truths. The screen faded to black, but the story didn't end there. 5 years later, Aderin stood in a university auditorium watching Jaehoon accept her law degree. The young woman on that stage bore little resemblance to the 4-year-old who'd climbed into her lap that first day, responding to a lullaby she shouldn't have known. Jaehoon had grown into someone extraordinary, not despite the trauma of her origins, but perhaps because of how the adults in her life had chosen to handle it. She carried herself with quiet confidence, spoke 3 languages fluently, and had already been offered positions at 2 prestigious human rights organizations. Mr. Seo sat beside Aderin in the audience, both of them clutching programs, both blinking back tears. She did it, he whispered. She really did. When Jaehoon's name was called, the applause from their section was probably too loud, too enthusiastic. They didn't care. Let people stare. Let them wonder about the Korean man and Nigerian woman cheering together for their shared daughter. At the reception afterward, Jaehoon found them in the crowd. "There are my parents," she said to the friend beside her, and the casual way she claimed them both still made Aderin's heart swell. "Congratulations, Dr. Seo," Mr. Seo said with a grin. "Not a doctor, Dad. Just a lawyer." "Not just anything," Aderin corrected. "The best lawyer." Jaehoon laughed. Then her expression turned serious. "I have something to tell you both. I got the fellowship." Mr. Seo's eyes widened. "The International Adoption Reform Project?" "Yes. I start in September. I'll be working on legislation to close gaps in international adoption law, create better oversight for private adoptions, establish protocols to prevent fraud." She looked between them. "I'm going to spend my career making sure what happened to us becomes impossible. That mothers don't lose children they're told are dead. That children don't grow up in families built on lies." Aderin pulled her into a fierce hug. "Your mama would be so proud." "Both my mamas," Jaehoon said quietly. It was the first time she'd acknowledged Warren that way in years. Not with forgiveness exactly, but with recognition that the woman had been part of her story, part of what shaped her. "The work you're going to do will save families," Mr. Seo said, voice thick. "You're taking something that hurt you and using it to help others. I learned that from you too. You took an impossible situation and made it work. If you can do that, I can do this." Later, at the family dinner they'd planned, Jaehoon's boyfriend proposed. Right there in the restaurant, in front of both sets of parents, he got down on one knee and asked her to marry him. Jaehoon said yes, crying and laughing simultaneously. The wedding planning brought its own complications. 2 families, 2 cultures, 2 sets of traditions to honor. But they'd had years of practice navigating complexity. The wedding, when it happened 8 months later, was beautiful chaos. Traditional Korean elements blended with Nigerian customs. Jaehoon wore 2 dresses, incorporated 2 ceremonies, honored both heritages fully. Mr. Seo walked her down the aisle first, then Aderin met them halfway. Together, they presented her to her future husband. "Who gives this woman in marriage?" the officiant asked. "We do," they said in unison. "Her family." During the reception, while Jaehoon danced with her new husband, Mr. Seo and Aderin found themselves at the same table. "We did good," he said, echoing his text from years ago. "We did. I never thanked you properly. For not running. For not taking her when you could have. For choosing the hard way." Aderin sipped her wine, considering. "I thought about it. Every day for months. I thought about just disappearing with her. Starting over somewhere you'd never find us. What stopped you? The look on her face when you'd pick her up. The way she'd run to you. The way she loved you completely, innocently. The way children should love their parents. I couldn't steal that from her just because someone had stolen her from me. That must have been agony. It was. But motherhood isn't about possession. It's about doing what's best for your child, even when it destroys you. Mr. Seo nodded slowly. I think about what Warren said sometimes. About wanting to be a mother so badly, she didn't care how she made it happen. I understand that desperation now. I felt it when I thought I might lose Jehun during the custody battle. But you didn't act on it. No, because I saw what acting on that desperation had done. The lives it destroyed. I didn't want to be that person. They watched Jehun laugh as her husband spun her across the dance floor. She's happy, Aderin said. That's all I ever wanted. Me too. A comfortable silence settled between them. Not friendship exactly, but something deeper. The bond of two people who'd survived a war together and chosen peace. Across the room, Jehun caught their eyes and smiled. Then she did something unexpected. She walked over, took both their hands, and led them to the dance floor. One dance, she said. The three of us. Because we're family, and that's worth celebrating. So they danced. Awkward and laughing. Three people bound by history and choice and love that had survived impossible odds. The photographer captured it. The image would later sit on Jehun's mantle next to her wedding photo and the framed hospital bracelet and dozens of pictures documenting a life well lived despite its fractured beginning. Months later, Jehun called Aderin with news. I'm pregnant. Aderin's breath caught. Oh, sweetheart. I'm terrified. What if something goes wrong? What if history repeats itself somehow? It won't. You're in a different hospital, a different country, different circumstances. And you're going to be a wonderful mother. Will you be there? When the baby comes. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. And Dad. Of course. We'll both be there. The pregnancy was smooth. No complications. Just a healthy woman carrying a healthy baby in a stable, loving environment. When labor started, Jehun's husband called both grandparents-to-be. They met at the hospital, Mr. Seo and Aderin, waiting in chairs that probably hadn't been comfortable since they were installed. Feels familiar, Mr. Seo said quietly. Too familiar, Aderin agreed. But this time was different. This time, when the baby was born, they heard her cry immediately. When they were allowed into the room, Jehun was holding her daughter, alive and pink and perfect. Meet your granddaughter, Jehun said, tears streaming. We're naming her Adeline. After my mama. Aderin couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She took the baby in trembling hands and looked down at the tiny face. Hello, Adeline. I'm your grandmother. And I promise you're going to know exactly where you came from, who loves you, and why your story matters. Mr. Seo stood beside her, looking at the baby over her shoulder. She has Jehun's nose. And your ears, Aderin said with a watery laugh. And your eyes. They stood there together, marveling at the newest member of their complicated family. A child who would grow up knowing her full history, the painful parts and the triumphant parts, raised by parents who'd learned from their predecessors' mistakes. When Jehun's husband came back with coffee, he found all three of them crowded around the hospital bassinet, taking turns holding Adeline, arguing gently about who she looked most like. This is what she'll remember, he said, taking a photo. Not the complicated history. This, family showing up, love being bigger than the past. That night, driving home from the hospital, Aderin thought about the circle. How she'd lost a daughter in a hospital and found her years later. How that daughter had grown into a woman who'd just given birth in a hospital, creating a new generation. How the lies had been replaced with truth. How the theft had been transformed into something resembling justice. How brokenness had been slowly, painfully, mended into wholeness. Her phone buzzed at a red light. A message from Jehun. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. I hope I can be half the mother you are. Aderin pulled over because she couldn't see through the tears. She typed back. You're already better. You get to start from the beginning. You get to hold your daughter from day one and never let anyone tell you she's not yours. That's the gift we gave you. Use it well. The response came quickly. I will. I promise. Aderin sat in her car on the side of the road, crying and smiling simultaneously, thinking about the woman she'd been 8 years ago. The one who'd opened a file and found her name, her hospital number, her daughter's hidden existence. That woman had been terrified, grief-stricken, powerless. This woman was a grandmother. A mother who'd fought impossible odds and won. A survivor who'd turned trauma into strength. The journey between those two versions of herself had been brutal, but it had been worth it. She started the car and drove home, already planning her next visit to meet Adeline. Already thinking about the lullabies she'd sing, the stories she'd tell, the love she'd pour into this new life. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some have true endings instead. Complicated, messy, real endings where people do their best with impossible situations and somehow create beauty from ashes. This was one of those stories, and it was still being written. 3 years later, Aderin published a book, a memoir titled The Bracelet, A Mother's Search for Truth and Justice. It detailed everything: the loss, the discovery, the battle, the resolution. Jahan had given her blessing, had even written the foreword. The book became an international sensation. It sparked conversations about adoption ethics, international law, the rights of birth mothers. It led to policy changes in 3 countries. It connected Aderin with dozens of other mothers who'd lost children to fraudulent adoptions. She started a foundation, used the book proceeds to fund it. The Adeline Foundation, named for her granddaughter, dedicated to reuniting families separated by adoption fraud and supporting mothers through the aftermath. Mr. CEO served on the board. Jahan did pro bono legal work. Even Lami, who'd kept her promise of silence for years, came forward to testify in cases that needed insider knowledge of how the systems were exploited. The work was hard. Most cases didn't end as well as Aderin's had. Most mothers never found their children. Most children never learned the truth. But some did. And those victories mattered. On the Foundation's 5th anniversary, they held a gala. Mothers and children reunited through their work attended. Lawmakers who'd changed policies spoke. Journalists who'd exposed corruption were honored. Jahan gave a speech, now a prominent human rights attorney, pregnant with her 2nd child. My mother told me once that motherhood isn't about possession. It's about doing what's best for your child, even when it destroys you. She lived that truth when she chose to share custody instead of run. When she chose my well-being over her revenge. When she chose honesty over comfortable lies. She looked at Aderin in the audience. Because of her choices, I grew up whole. I grew up knowing where I came from. I grew up with 2 parents who loved me enough to do the hard work of co-parenting across cultures, languages, and painful history. She paused. But not every child gets that. Not every mother who's been victimized has the resources or support to fight. That's why this foundation matters. That's why this work matters. We're not just reuniting families. We're proving that truth is stronger than lies. That love is more powerful than theft. That justice, even delayed, is worth fighting for. The applause was deafening. Later, at the after-party, a young woman approached Aderin. She couldn't have been more than 25, holding a baby. Mrs. Okoye, I'm Sarah. Your foundation helped me find my son last year. He'd been adopted by a family in Europe. They didn't know the adoption was fraudulent. When the truth came out, they could have fought me. Instead, they did what Mr. CEO did. They chose shared custody. They chose truth. She held out her baby. This is David. Named after your work, your example. I wanted to thank you. You saved my life. Aderin held the baby, this child who existed in his mother's arms because of work that had started with her own pain, and felt the circle expand again. One story becoming many stories. One fight inspiring other fights. One truth creating space for more truths. That night, lying in bed, Aderin reflected on the 8 years since she'd found that bracelet. 8 years of impossible choices and hard-won victories. 8 years of learning that justice wasn't a single moment, but a continuous practice. 8 years of discovering that healing happened in layers, slowly, sometimes painfully, but completely if you let it. Her phone lit up with a photo. Jahan and Adeline, playing in a park, both laughing. The caption read, "She asked about the bracelet today. Told her the whole story. She said you're a superhero." I agree. Aderin smiled, saved the photo, and closed her eyes. Somewhere, other mothers were losing children. Other lies were being constructed. Other families were being fractured. But also, somewhere, mothers were finding children. Truths were being spoken. Families were being rebuilt. The work continued. The fight continued. The hope continued. And that was enough. That was everything. The story that had started with a lie 8 years ago had transformed into something greater than Aderin could have imagined. Not just her story anymore, but a movement, a foundation, a legacy. Motherhood, she'd learned, wasn't just about the child you held. It was about the children you fought for, the systems you changed, the mothers you helped, the truth you insisted on speaking even when silence would have been easier. She'd been hired as a nanny and discovered they'd stolen her baby. But she'd become so much more than a victim of that theft. She'd become a warrior, a changemaker, a voice for the voiceless. And her daughter, the child they'd tried to erase and rename and claim as their own, had become exactly who she was meant to be. A fighter, a truth teller, a woman who took her fractured beginning and forged it into purpose. Some lies destroy everything they touch. But this lie had been exposed, dismantled, and transformed into something that created hope instead of taking it away. And in the end, that was the truest victory of all. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it moved you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your engagement helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Until next time.